government spending. That is the only stimulus that will work.
We'll disagree on that. I think we need to do both. I don't think there's any member of Congress that does not believe that we need to do both. Mr. Boucher, what's your opinion on that?
It's hard to imagine how spending, that right now when interest rates are at historic lows, when people still want to buy U.S. Treasuries, when we have this massive unmet need in terms of both infrastructure, but all of the massive layoffs that have happened in education around America because of the state and local budget crunches, that using government dollars right now for those, it is hard to understand how that is not easy for us to do because we can afford it, and B, that does not help our economy. Having children in school rooms in places across the country with 40 children is not good for America's future. It's not good for America's workforce. We can do something to fix that. We can borrow at historic low rates, and we can pay it back as the economy gets back on track. And I'd like to take issue with one thing that Mr. Schiff said earlier, which is that America can't afford it. America remains one of the richest countries on the planet. To say that we cannot afford to make these investments right now when our economy needs it most and get 14 million people back to work is quite frankly absurd. We can afford it. It's just how we're using our resources.
We can afford it. And the problem is interest rates are low now. They're not going to stay low. We've got a $15 trillion national debt financed with Treasury bills. It's the same mistake that people made who were taking out subprime mortgages. What's going to happen when rates are at 5% or 10%? What's going to happen when interest on the national debt consumes 100% of federal tax receipts? That can happen in just a few years. Interest rates got to 20% in 1980. What happens if they go there again?
Madam Chair, I see my time is up, but I just want to need 15 seconds to say this. One of the things that we've got to do, we have got to invest in our people. If you got kids, one of the greatest threats to our national security is our failure to properly educate every single one of our children. That's the greatest threat. And if we have to spend now to educate our children so that they can take over this world, innovate, create jobs, and do the right thing, fine. At the rate we're going, though, if we're not careful, we will implode from the inside. Because we're not doing all the things we need to do now.
We're spending and not educating. We don't need more spending on education. We're spending too much, and kids are not getting educated. We need more on-the-job training. Unfortunately, we have too many kids going to college on government grants. It's bid up the price into the stratosphere, and we have all these kids graduating with huge mortgages and no houses and no marketable skills.
I'm saddened by those comments.
Well,
thank you, Mr.
Saddened by what those programs have done to our young people.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. I yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
The artificially low rates that we're working with today. Any type of an idea or a scenario, what could happen when these rates that are being kept artificially low, and we know for the next, at least until the election, there's going to be a low prime rate. But when it rises to what it should be, market value, the effect that it's going to have on businesses.
Well, I mean, the problem, the artificially low interest rates right now are one of the main problems that the economy has, and I think we're pursuing those rates to prop up insolvent banks, to necessitate the government bubble, the borrowing from the federal government. And when interest rates ultimately rise, all the banks that you guys bailed out, they're all going to fail again. Because they're insolvent. They're only kept afloat by the cheap money from the Fed. Their portfolios are loaded up with low-yielding, long-term mortgages and government bonds. And when interest rates go up, the value of those assets will collapse. But they have to go up because eventually the dollar will sink so much, prices will rise so much, nobody will lend us money. The dollar won't be the reserve currency. Right now it's kind of benefiting from the fact that there are problems in other parts of the world. But look at the price of gold. It's at $1,900 an ounce for a reason. Right? It's going up because of all the inflation that we're creating now and all the inflation that we're going to have to create in order to keep interest rates at these low levels. And the only way to solve our problems is to let interest rates go up. And they're going to go way up. And then what are we going to do? I mean, if we keep inflating this bubble, if we let the national debt get to $20 trillion and then rates go to 10 or 20%, what people are saying now is exactly what they said during the real estate bubble. People used to tell me, Peter, you're crazy. Real estate prices will never fall. Well, now we know what happened. People are now saying the same thing with interest rates. We don't have to worry because interest rates will never rise. They will stay low forever. They won't.
No, and you're right. The only thing we know for sure is they're not going to rise before the next election.
Well, we don't know that for sure. They're going to try everything they can to prevent it.
And the other thing that's going to happen is we print money that isn't backed by anything, our lenders are going to say at some point, you're paying me back with money that isn't worth what I lent you.
We're destroying the value of our money, and that's why prices are rising. Oil prices aren't going up. In fact, Ron Paul pointed out in his last debate, you can buy a gallon of gasoline for a dime, as long as you have a dime that was minted before 1965. It's because our money is being debased by the Federal Reserve, and that's what's happening. Prices aren't going anywhere. The value of our money is declining, and it's going to lose a lot more value in a very short period of time if we continue these policies.
And the President's new plan, there's a $4,000 incentive for hiring people who have been unemployed for long periods of time. For somebody like yourself who's an employer, and somebody who, like myself, who is an employer, who interviews people, are we picking winners and losers as to who it is we're going to hire?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. In fact, this is another example of things that are going to backfire. The government is proposing a plan to make it illegal for employers to discriminate against people who have been unemployed for more than 6 months. The effect of this is going to be is nobody is going to interview anybody who's been unemployed for more than 6 months because they don't want to risk a lawsuit. All this plan is going to do is going to mean if somebody was going to hire somebody anyway, they'll try